So today we're talking about three fantastic movies and sort of what they tell us, you know, all existing roughly in the end of history period, which we'll talk about to start. But we're beginning with 1991, Star Trek VI, Undiscovered Country. I think possibly my favorite of the Star Trek. I mean, there's no wrong answer when it comes to those Star Trek movies.
Except five.
Yeah. Okay.
Five's the one with the whales, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a term for things that I don't think exist anymore. It's called a buddy of mine in college started. It's called Use on Vong because we decided long before Disney bought Lucasfilm and got rid of all of the old EU that our EU stops with the Use on Vong, like the new Jedi series. And the Use on Vong was so stupid that we've like blanked it out of our existence. It doesn't exist, and then Disney comes around like 10 years later and says it doesn't exist. So Star Trek V is I have Use on Vonged that entire movie. That's probably a little bit of heresy, but on some level, I kind of like Star Trek V, even while recognizing that it's objectively bad. Right.
Mhm.
I mean, it's one of those movies where, like, if it's on TV, like if I'm flipping through channels and it's on TV, I'm like, oh yeah, the one with the whales, and the one where they're in San Francisco and it's 1989.
Hello, computer.
Yeah,
Hello, computer.
yeah,
It's good stuff.
it's definitely ripe for riffing, but it's definitely a very riffable Trek.
Anyway, so we're starting there. We're starting with, Shakespearean Klingon Christopher Plummer. Then we're going to 1997's Gattaca and 2006 Children of Men.
Yes.
I think one of the themes for season 2 is going to be like talking about end of history on film, which we'll have to clarify so that people don't think that our show is ending. But these are all a great way to start, especially Star Trek VI. Rewatching it, I was surprised at like how much of it is articulating the fall of the Soviet Union, sort of like right as it's happening, because the film comes out in 1991. I was like, damn.
We've talked before about how some movies, they kind of come out and you almost think they were made like 20, 30 years later after where they came out because they're so relevant and pertinent to the era. I know I've referenced Casablanca as one of those movies where everything we know about World War II now, you think that was made in like the 60s or 70s because it's very knowing of what's going on in Europe where, I mean, we weren't even in the war yet. So you got Casablanca. We mentioned in our Xanadu episode how some of the fashions in Xanadu were kind of made for the movie, like leg warmers, and that became like 80s fashion later on. It's very 80s when it's not trying to be very 80s. And then Star Trek VI is another one of those where it's kind of being made right as the event is happening, which of course, if it comes out when the event's happening, of course, there's production times. This thing was being written and pre-production and everything like that. Could have been 2-3 years leading up to the release, depending on the cycle. So it's very relevant to the era whilst not trying to be, trying to do its own thing in a lot of ways. So I think I always find that exciting when I look at a movie that's talking about a current event as the events are happening.
You just heard a clip from the most recent episode of the History on Film podcast. For more of this episode and access to all our episodes, search for the History on Film podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and Pandora. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel here on YouTube. You can also check out our Discord server, follow us on Blue Sky and Instagram, and please consider supporting us on Patreon. Links in the description. Thanks for listening.